So we are on the last of our sermon series, Why Church? And we're going to give you a short message and then actually give you one more testimony. Really excited about this. We've been kind of cruising through this question, why church? And then next week we go into an Overcomer series about habits and lifestyles, and just that God hasn't called us to be people who lay down in the dirt and kind of get walked on, but He's called us to be overcomers of addiction, of habits, of lifestyles, of all kinds of challenges in life. So next week we start Overcomers with the block party, but this week we're going to wrap up Why Church? And we've been asking the question, why should we do church? Why do we have church? Because there's 1,000 things you could be doing on a Sunday morning rather than be here. There's 1,000 things you could be doing rather than be meeting with your small group or with another group. There are a billion things you could be doing rather than reading your Bible for certain. And so we've been talking about why do we do church at all? And today is our last message on that. And ultimately we're going to come back to the answer is we are the only place that helps people get to know Jesus. And so one of the challenges with that then is, well, what is it that we're known for? Because if the church should be known as the place that helps people move closer to Jesus, what is it that the church is actually known for? And when you hear people begin to say, well, I don't go to church because, or I don't like church because, or I don't want anything to do with church because, it's usually because they say, the only thing the church cares about is money. Very good. You see now, I just sat there the other night and I thought, I wonder if they'll get this one. Like this was, because sometimes we struggle with like the answer is Jesus, and I'll go, the answer is, and you'll be like kind of, Moses, I don't know. And there's two of you that answer, but see what I mean? The minute we start saying the reason people don't come to church because the only thing the church talks about or cares about is money, like we all knew that, right? We all knew the answer. In fact, I was talking to one lady a couple months ago, and she says, every time I go to church, I only talk about money, and they take up an offering every Sunday. I said, yes, they probably do. And we had a wonderful conversation about that. But her belief, because of some of her past situations, was the only thing the church cares about is money. Now I need to pause, because we kind of jokingly, but it's serious, call ourselves the church for people recovering from church. You got it? It's the church for people recovering from church. Like, I've been somewhere and the church got the priorities and their values and everything mixed up. In fact, they didn't look at all like Jesus. And so we kind of call ourselves the church for people who are in recovery. Hi, my name is Aaron. I have been to those places, and I just want you to know that I'm glad to be here in a church full of people recovering from religious experiences. And I'm glad to be part of a place where people are just wanting to know who and what Jesus is. Amen? But we've all been around someone who's got 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't do church and why church is only about money. In fact, we've been to places and maybe been in experiences where we saw the church fight over silly things like the color of the carpet. Right? Or, hey, you can't have coffee in this area. Right? And we've seen churches maybe where they got excited about, hey, kids can't run in church. And then maybe some of you have even been somewhere where you heard someone say like, do not laugh or smile in church. God doesn't like that. Right? And you're walking away going, man, Jesus hung out at a lot of parties. I'm not sure this place is getting it. And then somewhere along the way, we were told things like, you can't be part of us because you got a tattoo. You were wearing shorts. Jesus would never wear shorts. That's true. They weren't invented yet. You can't come hang out with us because you drive that car, or you said that, or you're not reading the King James Bible. Because when Jesus spoke, He spoke the King James language. Right. By the way, it wasn't invented yet either. It was just... And so we've all heard or had experiences in which we walked away from a church going, I don't want any part of it. I don't want anything to do with it. In fact, if that's what church looks like, and if that's what Jesus looks like, I don't even want anything to do with Jesus. And sometimes we have trouble separating the church from Jesus because the church is supposed to be the reflection of Jesus. And then God sits there going, man, you're breaking my heart. You're screwing it up. Go on, get it right. And today we want to talk about that for just a moment, because when we talk about why church, and as we wrap it up, the problem is that most often we forget the mission of the church. We forget what we're about, and we mess up our priorities. Now, you've probably never done this in your house, But I just want you to know, as a father, there have been moments where I've been tired, and there have been moments where I've been a little exhausted, and I come home and I've had a busy day, and somebody does something silly like, hey, I broke this glass, or hey, this happened, or hey, I put a dent in this, and I've gotten overexcited about something that I should never have gotten excited about. And so I deliver this message, not pointing any fingers or throwing rocks at any other church or any other community or anybody as an individual, because I have been there where I've gotten overexcited about stupid stuff. Let me just see a hand. If you are confessing with me, thank you for standing up, John. All right. So those of you that didn't raise your hand, I just want you to know we need to be honest. You're lying and going to hell. All right. So for those of us that, should we do it again just to make sure everybody's not going to hell anymore? Okay. So here's where we're going to go. We're going to go to Mark chapter 10. And we're just going to quickly walk through a scripture of where, hey, we aren't the only ones to do this. In fact, Jesus' original disciples messed this up. They got the priorities of the church, of the group, of the mission wrong. And so we're going to go into the Gospel of Mark chapter 10 and talk about where the disciples even messed this up. It says this. Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, called to him. Teacher. That's what one of Jesus' many titles. He was called teacher. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. How many of you know that's like a setup, right? Come on, parents, grandparents, you know that's a setup, right? Some of you did this to your parents. Wesley came to me the other day. He goes, Dad, I want to build something. Can I build it? Why don't we have a conversation about the what you want to build first? Where is it going to be? How big is it going to be? Is it going to be on our land? Is it going to cost us anything? Let's have this conversation first. Why can't you just answer the first question? I want to know what we're talking about, right? It's the setup. Jesus, we want you to answer yes to us, whatever we ask of you. Okay, how about you guys come out with it first? It says, let one of us sit at your right hand and the other at your left hand in glory. One of us at your right hand, the other at the left hand in glory. So here we go. The disciples have Jesus, very God in the flesh, hanging out with them. And the first thing that they're all excited about, the one thing that they're worried about, is that Jesus, tell us about how you healed that dude. Teach us how to pray better. Jesus, what's heaven really like? Jesus, explain this to us. Jesus, when you raise that dude from the dead, do you have to have your hand like this and your other hand like this? Or can you just kind of do this? Or Jesus, explain this to us. And the disciples had all this moment with God in the flesh. They could have asked anything they want, and they're worried about their own personal glory. And again, I would love to tell you that we are immune to this because we have evolved as a society, and now thousands of years later, we no longer worry about our own personal glory or our own needs. We're so focused on Jesus that none of that matters and no one ever gets hurt by a church, but we know that's not true. In fact, we come together and we go, hey, we work so hard to say what's necessary and not necessary. And that should be the goal of the church, to say what's really important, and what's really important isn't our personal glory, is it? It's not about me, and how do I get ahead, and how do I get my face on more, and how do I get more respect, and how do I get more street credit, and how do I get more popularity, and how do I just get 1,000 more followers on Twitter? But instead, it should be about God's glory, right? And so this is where the story goes. Jesus responds, you don't know what you're asking. You don't have a clue. You want to sit at my right and my left hand in glory? You don't have a clue. Have a clue what you're asking. Can you drink the cup I drink? Or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? Now, really interesting. The cup was a metaphor of your life. And so you would hear someone say, can you drink the cup that I'm drinking? Or can you handle the cup? Or this is my cup in life. And we don't say it very often anymore, but it was a typical saying in Jesus' day. And it just meant, can you die and live how I'm going to die and live? Can you drink the cup? Can you live my life? And can you be baptized? Again, baptism, JP referenced it, a symbol of death. As the water is on you, and then you come back to life. And so Jesus is saying, can you live my life, and can you die the torturous death I'm about to die? We can, they answered. The clueless answer of teenagers, right? I don't know. Yeah, we can do it. Jesus said to them, indeed, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. Now, what we know is that James and John are martyred. They go on to preach the gospel and are killed and tortured for the sake of Jesus. Jesus says, but to sit at my right hand or my left, it isn't for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they've been prepared. Basically what Jesus says is, you guys are so worried about stuff that's not really something you should be worried about. You should be worried about how do we spread the good news? How do we reach more people? How do we, and again, all these things that we could and should be worried about. You guys you're missing the point. In fact, when you guys die, when you drink the cup and are baptized with, what is going to be your reputation? As JP asked, is there going to be enough people to convict you to love Jesus? And the question for us, first of all, should be as a community, is there going to be a reputation for us in town? And is there a reputation for us in town? That's the church at what? What's the reputation? Jesus answers for us what it could be and should be. Jesus answers for us what it could be and should be. But before he gets there, of course, because it's a story about the disciples, we have two more disciples who get upset about the question, right? You see this. When the 10 heard about this, the 10, because remember there were 12 disciples, 2 of them asked the question. So there's 10 of them, 10 little children now that come to Jesus upset, right? Because, well, they asked for more Oreos, and they got more sippy cups drinks than I did. Jesus, how come you gave them more Oreos, right? That's what's going on, right? You see it? It says, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together. Come here, little kids. Come here. Stop. You're all whining and fussing about stuff that's not important. You ever feel like doing that with a group of adults? That's what Jesus is doing, right? Come here. Let me dry your eyes. There you go. They had really big eyes in the Bible. That's it. Glad that 2 of you got that. All right. He says, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. You don't need much explanation. You know someone who thinks they're better than you, right? Someone who thinks they're better than everybody else, and you kind of stare at them scratching your head going, I pray that God strikes you with a lightning bolt, right? You've been there, right? Like, just knock him down a few notches, God, or knock her down a few notches, right? Here we have someone lording over, I got this position, and I am better than you. I am so much greater than you. You are here to serve me. Everything you do, it's about me. It's about me. It's about me. Mine. And Jesus says, look, you should have a reputation change. If you're going to be great leaders in my kingdom, not the one of this world, but in my kingdom, he says, not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Wait a second, Jesus isn't the servant like at the end of the totem pole, like they're like last on the list of highly respected people? Yep. Jesus isn't the servant, kind of the one who does what everybody else says, like they're not, like they don't really have rights. Yep. I'm a little lost, Jesus. You said that person was, whoever wants to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven has to de-elevate themselves. Yep. And whoever wants to be first must be slave to all. Now I want to be very clear. Jesus isn't saying you should physically go become an indentured servant to somebody and do whatever they tell you. But he is saying that the reputation of the church and who we are as a church should be that of those who serve the community and the world. When people look at the church, they should go, that kind of looks like a church who's in love with Jesus because they're doing the work of Jesus and they're caring for people around them. They are showing the love of God in physical and practical ways. And so when we talk about what should the reputation of the church be, we're kind of getting there, but it should be like, hey, isn't that the church that packs 200 bags of food every week to give away to preschoolers? Yeah. To the school kids? Yep. And what if around not just Fairborn but an entire Dayton area they said, isn't that the church that gives away like clothes? Like they have over 300 families a year that come in and get clothes. Yeah, that's who we are. And don't they do this apartment ministry? Yeah, they take families in who kind of got to get their life back together. And yeah, ain't that the place where we go and we get toys at Christmas because they do that toy? Yeah, they fill up the whole gym. It's kind of a moment of chaos and crazy. Isn't that the place that? Yeah. And there's 1,000 things that the church should and could be known for, because the church should and could be known as a place that serves, not the place that's concerned about your money, not the place that's concerned about the color of the carpet, not the place that's concerned about this or this or this, but the church that's known as a place that serves the culture. In fact, we say right now, if the government would issue a law and say, hey, we have to shut down this church, we should be so integral and so essential to the community as a place that serves and cares that there should be an uproar and a riot amongst Fairborn saying, you can't shut down a church, we don't know how to live without them. But here's the trick. Because if that was where the church's mission, if that's where we stopped, if that's where we said, this is why we do church, because we are the place of service, we've done an injustice to the gospel. If that was all the farther it went, we've messed up the whole story. And Jesus, as if he knew, like right on cue, hey, you guys are going to start screwing this up. You're going to become a place that's just concerned about social justice or a service. You're just going to be like a welfare agency or something. It's almost as Jesus said, hey, I can see the church heading that way. I need to call you back to the main mission, the very main mission of the church, which is what? To move people closer to Jesus, right? Right? The main mission of the church is to move people closer to Jesus. In fact, right now, just so we can all practice that, because there'll be a test later, I want you to turn to your neighbor right now and say, hey, the mission of the church is to move people closer to Jesus. Yeah. You should turn to your neighbor and say, I know. Why are you telling me that? I said, because I'm a servant. The guy up there, he's kind of loud, and he said so. So Jesus responds with an answer to the question, calling us back to the very core mission of the church. And he says, listen. It's not just about service, but it's about this, guys. Listen. He says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. He says, look, you've got to become a servant, because you got to de-elevate yourself. The glory in the kingdom of heaven isn't what the glory of the earth. They're two totally different systems. And he says, this, it's so important that we don't miss this. And he says, and the Son of Man came to give his life as a ransom for many. He says, all this is important, and this is how we should act, and this is how we should behave. But don't miss the very core essence of the church. And the reason why we exist is because I came to save people from sin. This word ransom is really interesting. It literally means to buy a slave back. To buy a slave back. So the scripture actually tells us about a problem that many of us forgot we had, or some of us don't even know we have right now. In fact, you may be one of our guests today going, I didn't know we had a problem. Do we have a problem? Why is Jesus ransoming something? Who bought me? Why am I in debt to somebody? What's going on? Somebody explain the story to me. I'm a little new here. Basically, it's like this. When we don't follow God, that's called sin. And when we sin, we become prisoners to sin. And God then is separated from us by sin, because the holy God cannot have anything to do with sin other than to reach out and rescue. God can't hang out with sin. The holiness and pollutants cannot mix. And so God's children were doomed as prisoners of sin. And Jesus said, I'll go rescue. Dad, send me on the mission. Jesus came down from heaven. God became fully human, wrapped himself in human flesh, and died upon a cross as a ransom, paying the price for our sin. Now, we may have heard this message 1,000 times, or it may be the first time you've ever heard it. But it is so important for the church at the end of the day to go, this is why church. While we have all these wonderful programs, and while those are means and methods of caring and love, at the core of who we are is the identity that we are the only place in the entire world that has the message that says, because Jesus came to rescue you. That's the message of the church. So at the end of the day, when we talk about why do we do church, it's because we are the hope of the world. We are the only instrument, the only tool, the only group that Jesus left saying, share this message. Why, church? Because Jesus gave his life as a ransom for your sins, for my sins. That we don't have to be who we once were before we came to know Jesus. But that we could be born. So I was thinking of a way to wrap this up, and I wanted to invite one of my friends, Taylor Brantley, to come and share. I knew Taylor several years ago, first met her several years ago in Columbus, and this beautiful young lady, part of our youth group. Come on up, Taylor. And she was part of the youth group, and we got to love on her and care for her, and she went to school here in Dayton then, and we met a couple weeks ago, and she was just kind of sharing with me her story. And she's getting ready to go on a mission trip. And I said, you ought to come to our church and talk a little bit about your mission trip. And here's what we'll do. We'll put a basket on the back table for you, and we'll just collect some money for your mission trip. But I said, most importantly, you need to share your story. One, for your sake, because how many of you know what happens when we have sin in our life and we don't confess and share our story? We know that it holds us prisoner, right? Emotionally and spiritually, because we always sit there and go, I wonder if somebody knew who I was and what I did, would they still? Yeah. Or will they look at me completely different, not want anything to do with me? And so I said to Taylor, I think you need to come and share your story. She goes, I've never done it before. And I go, I know, we're a good place to do it on, because we've been training ourselves on what it means to give out grace and love, and we will look at you different, because we're going to love you even more and better, because now we know who you are behind the mask. And I said, I want you to come and share your story so that we can love you more appropriately, and that the secret no longer holds you prisoner. But this will help us remember why Jesus came, to give his life as a ransom. So will you give God a big hand as Taylor shares her story?
Okay. Alrighty, my name's Taylor. I live in Columbus. I grew up in a normal house. My parents are married, have been for like 29 years now, and I have an older brother and sister. I had a really pretty normal childhood. I mean, I had 2 older siblings, so of course we like fought and played and repeated the cycle over and over again. Plus I was the baby, so I got picked on a lot. But as a child, I have an older sister, and we were both molested by a relative for like 3 to 4 years. We never talked about it. We knew not to tell mom and dad because that was bad. We'd get in trouble. All of that. So I carried that and didn't tell anybody. In 8th grade, my sister tried to bring it up and try to talk about it because she was wrestling with what had happened. And I just refused to talk about it. I shut down, and I buried it inside, and I developed a pretty bad eating disorder to the point that I was like hospitalized a couple times for it. And then I had also had really bad depression, contemplated suicide, and all that throughout high school. High school was pretty rough. So when I got to have the opportunity to move out to Dayton and start all over and start a new life, and nobody knew me, I could start a clean slate. I had one roommate with me from Columbus, and together we met a lot of people, have a lot of great friends, some not so great. So I met a guy named Jeremy. We ended up working together. He was best friends with my roommate, and we all worked together. It was a great fun time. And then one night I was off work at Taco Bell at like 4 o'clock in the morning, so I walk into my apartment, and Jeremy is having a schizophrenic meltdown episode, however you want to call it. And at that time, he had 4 voices and one a demon, and that he had. And so that just started a very, very, very dark, deep cycle in my life. Jeremy ended up raping me multiple times, was every different kind of abuse that you can possibly have is what he was to me. There'd be nights that we wouldn't know if we would be able to like come home or not. And we'd make it through the night, or other people would make it through the night. And then about 8-9 months after I met him, I found out I was pregnant. I told him that I was pregnant. He told me it wasn't his, that there was no way it was his, which was the only person it could be. And I told him, and he told me that I couldn't keep it, that if I kept it, he would kill the kid, he would kill me. Or if I told anybody that it was his kid, he would kill me and my family and everyone, pretty much. Which I believed him because of his episodes that he would have. So after a few months, I was about to get an abortion, like towards the end of like the deadline of when you could have an abortion or not. I was going to get ready to go have an abortion, and my roommate and I sat outside of work, and we had a conversation. And she's just like, I can't be friends with you. Like, I love you too much. I know that this is not what you need to be doing. There's so many other options. Like, she told me that she would be my baby daddy, which was pretty great. So we together, we stood up to him and we're like, no, we're not doing this. We were okay. This child does not need to be in this environment by any means. So we began to look at other options. I began to look at other options. So I began to look into adoption, and this is like, God has placed people throughout my entire life to help me just, if I think I can't make it anymore, just to like give me that extra push and that extra love. And I don't think people ever realize like how much some small act means to me. But I ended up finding an amazing adoptive family. And if it wasn't for my son and me getting pregnant, I would not be here. I firmly believe that. But my son is now like 2.5, and he's happy and healthy and like lives in Arizona, and I still get to be a part of his life, and they have my picture in his bedroom. That's fantastic. But so I moved away from Dayton. So I went back home to Columbus and kind of put my life back together. Didn't put it back together the way I should have, and it fell apart in October, November of last year. And then I took my boss, because I'm a home health aide for a woman with cerebral palsy. She's kind of an Amy Grant groupie. Like, anywhere she can go see Amy Grant, she's there. Like, Amy Grant knows her, and it's fantastic. So I was up in Michigan at a Habitat for Humanity, like, silent auction, just, like, and hearing Amy Grant just, like, talk and sing. And, like, in the middle of it, like, I just felt like this huge calling just to go to mission. So I texted my mom. I was like, all right, let's find something. And she told me about the World Race, which is an 11-month mission trip where you travel to 11 countries in 11 months. I was like, that's way too long. I need something that's like 2-3 months. It's perfect. Couldn't find anything at all. And then like a week later, she's like, hey, look at this again. Like, here's just some more options. So I looked at the World Race. I watched a video, and I started bawling my eyes out. Like, holy crap, I knew that this is where I was supposed to be and where God was calling me to be. So 3 years ago, I was in like a demon-filled house. Didn't know if I would be able to make it out or survive the night. And then now I'm getting ready. I leave in 2 weeks to go to 11 different countries and with 40 other people, and just get to like love on orphans and everybody. And yeah.
In the name of God the Father, who says you don't have to be who you once were. You don't have to live with the reputation and the badges and the labels that the world gave you. And you don't have to run after the things that this world says are important or great. I have a different kingdom, different values for you. You are saved. You are delivered. You have been purchased with the ransom of Jesus Christ. You are free. May you go forth living as free people, blessed, beautiful, and safe. If you are a visitor with us today, we are having a lunch for you. It is in the room right across here. We want to welcome you. In the name of Jesus Christ, go forth.